All right, my friends, we are live. It is Saturday, 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're back with Matthew Pose. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
We are going to talk about fake reviews, fake
An-
news.
Another form of fake news.
It is a form of fake news. It really is. And this is nothing new. This has been going on for quite some time, not only in the audio industry, but in every industry in general. You find tons of fake reviews, especially online. And now with the advent of Amazon and influencer pages, there are sites set up to do nothing but funnel traffic to an Amazon page. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to cover this whole broad topic, but I noticed that over the last maybe 3 or 4 years, that people are setting up websites to do nothing other than getting good SEO to drive traffic to Amazon. And I think that that's diluting the voice in the crowd for people that are actually doing legitimate work, that are really trying to do objective analysis of products, when it's being drowned out by all these Amazon influencer pages.
Yeah, I think, what we've been finding, it's been in the news a lot lately, even though this isn't new, that there are companies dedicated to essentially paying real people to buy products and then write fake reviews that have to be 4 or 5 stars. And then the manufacturer that pays for this literally is paying, like, let's say $2,500 to get 500 fake reviews like that. And so it makes all of those reviews, these user reviews, not legitimate. And then you've got similar tactics going on with influencers, where the influencers are either themselves corrupted in this way or have been corrupted by marketing people to essentially be paid to review products in ways that aren't legitimate. And sometimes, like we were just talking about this, there's so many sites now where it's obvious they don't even have product in hand and they're talking about it as if they've used it before.
Yeah, you could always tell that. And I want to show you, I want to share you guys. This article was written many years ago, and it's on our site. And I've had some updates over the years. In fact, originally it was written by the late Tony Federici, who owned Accurus and Aragon, and he passed away a long time ago. But he wrote an article for this about fake reviews and how you're getting a lot of websites basically regurgitating what the manufacturer wants them to say. And then if enough people repeat it, it becomes fact, even if it's not. So I've taken that article since then and kind of updated it over the years. And there's some interesting stuff here. You can identify fake reviews, and many times right away they link to Amazon. There's no authors attributed to the article. It just says it's written by the staff. There's no actual real product photos. It's always, press release photos. They never actually have, they never do an unboxing. They never take it out of the box. They never show you the, the opening of the product. One thing we like to do when we review product is we take the stuff apart. And I know some manufacturers kind of shy away from, because they don't want their stuff opened. But that's just the nature of our beast. I've always done that. I'm an engineer. I like to see what's inside the product. I know you like to do that as well.
It's true. Yeah, we like to open up the products and see what the speakers look like inside the cross. I mean, that's really important for speakers to know whether the crossover is well designed, not just in terms of the response we measure, but what parts we see are being used in amplifiers or processors. I won't name names, but there are certain companies out there that sell pretty expensive home theater processors, and you open it up and there's like one tiny little panel in there basically that has everything on it and then lots of empty space.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. A lot of the high-end, so-called high-end esoteric companies are just a lot of empty space and a fancy shell. Here's one example I wanted to show you guys that I ran into. Somebody put up this website, and they basically put a bunch of nonsense text about this SVS speaker, and they wrapped it around one of our reviews. They took our video to actually give it credibility, as if we're endorsing it, or as if they did this video, assuming that whoever's reading this website's not going to look and see the Audioholics logo and realize they're not on Audioholics. And that takes us to a whole nother avenue that I've seen now. Is there's a website in South Africa called Audioholics, and it's a storefront to sell product, and they're trying to use our name. And it really pisses me off because I have a trademark for Audioholics in the US, but it's very expensive to get international trademarking and to go after these companies. But that's actually another topic. I don't want to go off too far in a tangent, but just to let people know that this is a struggle that we battle with all the time. Not only the fake reviews, but people scraping your content, putting it on their website and passing it off as their own content, And now because Google doesn't have Google Plus anymore for Google authorship, it doesn't really identify all the time correctly who originated that content. So you start drowning this out and people start copying your content and putting it on their websites, it kills your own SEO and it gives preferential treatment to them because it's newer content in terms of what Google sees.
Yeah, we recently found a bunch. One of my fairly recent articles, a Cowboys article, was stolen by a blog that was actually showing up quicker than my article was.
And it's still there and I'm still fighting them to try to get it down. So that's, yeah, that's kind of a sore spot with me. And then you see a lot of these best ofs. You know, you see articles popping up, best subwoofers for 2019, that best receivers. So we had to compete with that. We don't call this reviews, but I had to go for an SEO standpoint. I had to go and play the game that Google likes to be played. So I said, you know what? We're not going to call this stuff reviews. We're just going to put a bunch of different products together into an article, show you the specs, and let people compare them and tabulate the specs. And we're starting to do this now. So we have a tabulated spec of all the different products. If we actually have a review, we link to the review. We have a product page. And now, because everybody's doing Amazon, we kind of have to play that game too. We're starting to integrate Amazon links into our articles, but we never identify these articles as reviews when we do that. And if we put Amazon links in, we make disclaimers. Like, for example, we have a recommended system guide here. So people are always asking me, what do you recommend I buy for $1,500? Well, here is a $1,500 recommended system of all the products you can get on Amazon. I actually did a YouTube video on this a few weeks ago. And you see we have a disclaimer. For your convenience, we choose products available either direct or from manufacturers or through our Amazon affiliate page. And we get a small commission. And really, guys, it is like a tiny commission. You're talking a 2% commission. We're not getting rich off of this, but we're doing this more as a convenience for the reader because they're always asking for a point and click kind of way to buy a system. And if things work out to our favor, we usually try to pick products that we've reviewed, or we try to pick products that we know have gotten good reviews within the industry. But you got to kind of sift through to see what actual reviews have any meat or have any merit.
Yeah, and one of the things that has been really happening. So the FTC has laws basically that are designed to protect consumers, and the laws go to two different parts of this problem. So one part of it is that reviewers are protected, whether it's a consumer review or a professional review to some extent, in their ability to tell the truth. It is illegal for a manufacturer, for instance, to seek to have a review deleted. Doesn't mean they don't do it, but it's against the law to do that. And so whether we post a review that's negative about a product or a user has a bad experience and they choose to do that, we are protected legally to do that. The other part is that consumers need to also know essentially where reviews are coming from. And so another FTC law states that if we're making money off of providing a review, we need to explain that. So if it's something like advertising and the review is separate, that's different. But if it's something like quid pro quo, you're getting product in exchange for providing a review, you have to say that up front. And I've noticed, so we say, for instance, if you click on our link, we get a small commission from this. Everybody's supposed to do that. If you ever see a website that is promoting products and has Amazon links and they don't make clear that that's their link, that's actually against the law. And so you're supposed to do that in order to essentially lay bare the fact that you get something out of this. So if I'm saying, well, I really think that Morant's receivers are the best receivers, click on my links where I make a little money out of it, at least you know why I'm saying that. And it may be because they are the best receivers, or it may be because I'm getting money out of it. But
Yeah.
the people who read our magazine or watch our videos need to know that up front so they can make their own decision about the integrity of the review.
I'll tell you a funny story because I know you made this great slide presentation that I'd like to get into with you. But a funny story that happened, I would guess, God, it's been probably at least a good 6 or 7 years ago, maybe even longer. You remember when Lexicon tried to make a Blu-ray player, the
Yeah.
BB30? Well, when I went to a trade show and I saw that player, I immediately identified it as an Oppo. I think it was a BDP 83, maybe the
Mm-hmm.
SE, or no, just the 83. So I immediately knew it was an Oppo. I could just tell because
Yeah, they
you
just
and I,
stuck a lead plate on the bottom, right?
yeah, you and I can kind of assess these things. We know how things are designed. I've done 7 years of design work before I even got into doing a publication, so I know how bill of materials and PWBs and all that stuff lay out, where the components and where the connectors go. I knew right away. So I asked Harman Marketing, "Is this an Oppo?" And they said, "No, it's not. It's our own player. You should review it." I said, "Well, I'm going to actually take this thing apart and I'm going to analyze it, and measure it," and they were okay with that, which I was surprised, to be honest with you. Right around the time that we published our review, I would say we published it. I don't know if we published it before or after the competitor published it. The competitor website, which I will not name here because I don't want to start a war, because we've already been through the war with them. They went up and down claiming that this player was so much better than the Oppo. The sound quality, the picture quality. It was $3,000 more, but it was well worth it. The guy claimed he had a PhD, so he knew better. I go and published a review basically saying that this is an Oppo. It's an Oppo player, the entire player shoehorned into a nice chassis with blue lighting on it. I showed the pictures of it. I showed the measurements with my audio precision. I sent this to Harman and I sent it to Oppo and I sent it to THX. And we basically exposed this whole product. And within about 3 weeks, the product was taken off the market. The THX certification was pulled. And still, that other website was sticking to their guns, saying that we were providing misinformation. And they try to do a campaign all over the social media about how that we were the biased ones when we were actually showing people the product with facts. So again, you're in the realm of fake news, and I wasn't sure if it was because they were getting paid by Harman or if it's just because of technical incompetency or a combination of both. But that's when I started thinking about how it's really important to fact check, especially when you're doing product reviews, and get peer reviews. So every review that we do, always we send it to the manufacturer before we publish to make sure that wherever we're writing is correct, technically correct. Not that they're going to guide what we're writing, but if I make a mistake in a measurement and I think there's 10% distortion when something should only be 1%, and they show me with their audio precision or whatever tool that they're using that the measurement technique I made was wrong, I'll go and correct it before I publish. And I've done that before. I've made mistakes. I'm not perfect. I'm very fallible when it comes to doing that stuff. It's easy to make measurement mistakes. That's why you really do need a peer review process. That's why when we do reviews, you send me your review, I read it over, I send it to another one of our reviewers. He reads it over. We fact check everything before it goes online. That stuff takes time. That takes massive
Absolutely.
amounts of resources to do.
I suspect people don't realize this, but anything that goes up on your site and anything I've published on any site, it has always gone through a peer review process, and usually not one. So it's not one person read it. Often 3, 4 different people have read it with different types of technical expertise. And it ensures that whatever goes up, that the facts have been checked carefully and are accurate. In terms of measurements, one of the things that kills me with some of the reviews out there is there aren't a lot of companies still doing websites, review sites doing professional measurements included in their reviews, but there's a lot of like forum reviews and things like that where people include measurements. And unfortunately, measurements are hard. They're hard to do right. The equipment you need to do it correctly is pretty expensive, but there's inexpensive equipment that lets you at least try it. And so often we'll see things that are not accurate, and that's too bad too, because sometimes, and we'll get into a little bit the difference between professional reviews and standard user reviews, but when the two start to blend together a little bit, one thing that can happen is misinformation can come out, not because the person isn't necessarily incompetent, not because they're lying, just because I suppose it is incompetence, but that seems like too strong a word. They didn't know better. They made a mistake. I've chased my tail on measurements before, but
Oh yeah.
we have a process to get through that. It happened with the Cobuzz when I was doing the measurements on those songs. I think you remember this. I was getting really severe aliasing, and I was trying to figure out the source of the aliasing, and we just had decided it was actually, we thought it was Tidal. We thought it was built into Tidal, and so I had to get in touch with your friend that was the digital expert before we finally figured out that it had to do with the way that the sound was being essentially looped through to the recorder that was causing the aliasing, and not the actual service. But like, thank goodness I didn't publish anything that actually said, hey, Tidal's got horrible aliasing problems, and really it was my measurement error.
Yeah, and I'd like to add one caveat. I'm not bashing Lexicon or Harman because we do
No, they're
love
good companies.
we love the Harman brand. It's hard to make your own Blu-ray player. The resources are incredibly intensive and the profit margins are thin, and that's why Oppo's no longer in the business. And Oppo made some of the best Blu-ray players on the market, and then I shed a tear when they went out of business
It
for
was
that
too bad.
division. Yeah.
Well, the other
So
thing to keep in mind is Lexicon has not made their own products in a while. So their current receivers and AV processor is actually based on the Archem platform. They bought Archem for that reason. Their amplifiers, I believe, are Bryston. They used to be. I don't know if that's changed, but they used to be based on Bryston amps.
I know that. Well, I thought Lexicon used some ATI amps, or maybe that's another Harman brand, but that was a while ago.
I'm not sure. Yeah, Bryston was, I think, other people who are watching may know better yet. But the point is, Bryston makes great amps. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think that the Lexicons were any more expensive than the Brystons, or if they were, it was an amount that wasn't totally unreasonable. The Lexicon processors and receivers are a bit more expensive than the Archems, but not absurdly so, not as much as that Oppo was. There's nothing wrong with using a good product and putting your own name on it. What's wrong with it is when you do that and then upcharge $3,000
And
for
offer no performance enhancements.
right. You got to do
And
something.
they weren't the
Something.
first to do that.
No,
Not to harp on this point, but years ago when I was in college, I worked at a high end stereo shop and I was doing repair of equipment to learn the electronics. It was a great experience for me. And I was repairing Macintosh DVD players with Pioneer service manuals. They were pioneers with a
they
Macintosh
were. You're
faceplate.
right. Yeah, yeah. They're DVD players. They're Laserdisc players. And actually,
Yeah,
for
Laserdisc, not DVD. Sorry.
well, their DVD players were too, though. They had those as well. And then their home theater processors often were based off of platforms from either Pioneer or eventually it was, I believe, Marantz that they were
Yes.
building off of. And then they had another one that was based off of, I think it was a Lindorf processor. That I think they still sell that possibly. And
So
again,
I want to
there's
go
nothing wrong
over.
with that. It's just the price that's the
Yeah, I mean
problem.
that's it's the nature of the beast. You would be surprised, and probably we should do a video on this on how there's less product diversity in the market than you think, especially with loudspeakers when they're produced in China. I mean, there's
Oh,
many of the brands produced on the same assembly line.
it's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, let's go ahead and get into our presentation. We can talk a little bit about some of the details here.
yeah, we do that. So, guys, we are. I'm actually in the process of taking these slide presentations and I'm going to create an article on Audioholics that's password protected for patrons, and they could go back and look and get access to all of this stuff. So that's another perk when you join our Patreon channel is you'll be able to get these slide presentations, and you can have them as reference.
So if you
Uh,
click the upper left corner, yep, there we go.
Alrighty, here we go. Fake reviews. Who can
Yeah,
you trust these days?
I think it's getting harder, right? So let's talk about why. So here is a clip from an article I found about a lot of these reviews from Amazon being fake because people are purchasing them. So this was just in, what is the article date on that? Is November 20th, 2019. So this just happened. And basically what's going on is that there's companies that have been paying people to post fake reviews, like I mentioned. And some of the people who have been involved in this are starting to come forward to explain what they were doing. The thing about it is these companies are so bold that they present this like it's legal. It actually is illegal to do this, though.
Wow.
And so a lot of manufacturers, especially somebody mentioned Chinese, we know that a lot of these Chinese manufacturers are sending products to people and telling them directly, go post on Amazon. I want a 4 or 5 star review. You get the product for free. So a couple things you guys need to know. If a manufacturer ever sends you a product and then tells you to post it on Amazon and they tell you give it a 4 or 5 star rating, you are required by law you can do that, but you're required by law then to indicate that you were given that product for free by the manufacturer and asked to post the review. So there's companies that have made essentially an entire business model out of doing this. And the problem with this, we can go ahead and move to the next slide, but the problem with this is that essentially it ruins trust. And this isn't the first time this has happened, but it's ruining a whole new area. So if we know that many of the reviews are fake, how do we know which ones are real? Who is it that we're able to trust with this? And it's not unique to Amazon. This has been happening. So we know that there's influencer pages where this is happening. We know that there are YouTube videos that are essentially fake reviews being posted by manufacturers as if they are legitimate. There are consumers being asked to post these. There are, as I said, there's actual influencers, people who have substantial followers who are being given products and told to do videos. There are influencers who will charge you money for that. They'll go to you and they'll say, hey, look, for 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever, I will talk about your, and we hear this from our friends basically in the industry. So the manufacturers that we talk to on a regular basis when we get product for review will say to us, hey, do you know so and so from YouTube? They want to review our product. I can't believe it. They've asked me to give them a $5,000 amplifier and they want to keep it and they're going to give it a positive review. I said, no way. Thankfully, a lot of manufacturers that we deal with don't even want to deal with that, but that is what's going on in the industry. So we
Yeah.
can. So YouTube monetization, I mean, one of the things you guys got to know, if you have 1 million views on a video, if you're a pretty popular YouTube site, you'll get maybe $2,000 or $3,000 from that 1 million views. So monetization of YouTube videos is very small. You make pennies on it. And so what happens is that many of the people that are doing this charge for it. And there's nothing wrong with charging production fees for videos. The key is, like I had said earlier, people have to know that you're doing that. So if you're charging for it, you've got to make clear this is sponsored content. But a lot of these guys are putting it out there like these are independent reviews, not mentioning the fact that they've been paid money to do the review and they've been given product to do the review. And we've heard numbers. So one of the companies I was talking to that was really put off by this said somebody came to them, it was a very, very popular YouTube channel, and said, I want $30,000 production fee and I want the product. And it was the total products that they had asked for would have been about $50,000 for the products. And the guy, who's their main marketing guy, was like, there's just no way we're going to do that. That's insane. How would anybody take us seriously if that ever got out there?
Wow.
This is happening on YouTube. And of course it happens elsewhere. So one of the problems is that there's this real morality issue going on pay-to-play marketing. Pay-to-play is an old concept. So I think everybody who's watching this has probably heard of this. If they don't know the term pay-to-play, and I'll explain what it is, you probably get the concept of it at least. It's pretty straightforward. And so the idea behind pay-to-play is basically that if you want your product reviewed, you have to pay for it. Now, in the old days, this goes back to like probably the 50s. It was an old marketing concept. Pay to play was done where magazines and newspapers would essentially get paid advertising money in very particular ways in order to get their products reviewed. Now, the idea of paying advertising money to get products reviewed is not new. In fact, Audioholics get advertising money, and certainly we review products from the companies that advertise with us. That in and of itself is not really pay to play. The pay to play is when you're getting benefit out of the fact that you're paying for the advertising. And so this is where, for instance, the product, somebody advertises with you, you do more reviews than you normally would, and the reviews are overly positive, or you've even been told either directly or indirectly that the review needs to be positive for that kind of thing. And, I think, Gene, you've had this problem before. We're honest. If we review a product, regardless of whether they advertise or not, and we don't like it, we say that. And we've had, I think you've told me this before, you've had manufacturers pull advertising after you said, I don't really like this product. Sorry.
Oh yeah. I mean, I put it this way. I would be rich right now if I didn't have that problem with just speaking my mind, because we've lost more advertisers than we've gained by any time, because we take things apart and we do measurements, and if they don't like the way the review goes, not all the manufacturers like that. The ones that have good staying power, like the Sound United brands, for example, or the RBHs, or Legacy Audio, those kind of companies, they let you speak your mind. But not everybody's like that, and some of these companies, if they see any kind of negativity in the review, they'll either ask you to change it, don't publish the review, or they're just going to quietly go away. They won't say they're going to pull their advertising with you, but they just won't renew the next month or the next quarter or whatever the contract period is.
Yeah, and essentially that's the manufacturer pushing their own pay to play. So pay to play, as I said, it's an old concept. It's been around a long time, but it had gone away in favor of much more honest, real advertising. I mean, basically consumers got fed up. Magazines and newspapers started to lose readership like crazy. And what happened was things like websites, like your website, got very popular because people knew the magazines had been essentially completely corrupted, and these online magazines that were showing up from people like you were not corrupted. So they felt like, here's some honest, fresh perspective. I want this. I trust this. Well, marketing guys got hip to this basically and came in and started corrupting the websites too. And then the website started to lose popularity, and then forums got popular, and then they got corrupted. And then, Amazon user reviews and Google user reviews and you name it got popular for the same reason. People were looking for something that was honest and fresh and not corrupted. And the marketing people just kept coming in and corrupting it. And so we're right back to pay to play all over again. And it's ruined
Yeah.
trust in essentially what was
Especially
the,
with YouTube, because now you have
yeah.
YouTube influencer channels and they're growing at a way quicker rate than the editorial sites. In fact, our YouTube channel alone has more traffic on it per month than the reading portion of the Audioholics website,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah. So,
which kills me. It kills me because we put so much blood and sweat into the writing of the reviews, into the analyzing and the measuring, but then we'll get good viewership, but then we'll go on YouTube and do a 10-minute video and we'll get tens of thousands of views in a couple of weeks, much quicker and more feedback from readers because people's, well, this is a kind of another topic, but people's attention spans are shifting now and they want to see more visual and they want to have more interaction. And that's why YouTube is becoming such a powerful influencer on the reader. But it's very hard to monetize YouTube because, like you said, the advertising rates that you get from YouTube or from Google are pretty dismal. You got to get a ton of views in order to make any appreciable money. So that's why you're seeing sponsored content when it's not always labeled, or you're seeing these kind of pay to play scenarios.
right, exactly. And we have to make money. I mean, that's one of the things people have to remember is that they're not going to invest in doing professional quality reviews for free, just for the fun of it. So we all have to make money on this if we're going to do this, if for no other reason to cover the cost of doing it. And I guess I already went through what pay to play was, but
Yeah,
so we
yeah,
can probably skip through
we
that.
could. You guys
But
can look this over for a second, and we'll skip it over.
Sure. But the difference is, how are you getting paid, and are you being honest about that? So if you're getting paid to provide positive reviews, that's inappropriate. If you're getting product for free in exchange for review, that's inappropriate. If you're getting paid in the form of advertising or to help defer the costs of putting the production together, but with no influence over what you say, that's not necessarily inappropriate. Like I said, I still think you need to explain what you're doing to people, which is what we're doing
Yep.
here. But beyond that, that I think that's the key difference. So we can go ahead and move to the next one. So is Audioholics different? So one of the things I want to do is we're going in here and we're talking about this. And I realized as we talk about all these problems, people could come in and say, well, look, don't you guys get advertising? Don't you have ties to manufacturers? Aren't you just as bad as everybody else? But I think that we've put in place a bunch of things to help prevent that. So one of the things is that, Gene, you've been honest from the front with people. You've always said it how it is. If you didn't like a product, you said that and you explained it. And a lot of our reviews are not all positive. Even if we do like a product, if there's something wrong with it, we bring it up. In many cases, there's products that are not very good, but they're very cheap. And so maybe they're fine for the money. So we might give them 3.5 stars. I get into a speaker like that later, because it was okay for its low price, but it wasn't good. It had issues. And we say that. We're honest. And then you see other people's reviews and they're like nothing but glowing. It's a perfect speaker.
Yep.
So, this magazine, I think, has always been honest. We provide measurements, and I think measurements keep reviewers honest, because if something measures bad, we should expect that it probably sounds bad. And then I've heard John Atkinson has said this, and I think it's one of the things I agree with him on with measurements. Measurements really serve the subjective perception of a product is how good it sounds, but the measurements tell us how well engineered it is. And so we measure these things, which allows reviewers to know how well engineered a product is.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's something that sets this magazine apart from others.
Well, and a more recent example is I just did a YouTube video on the Yamaha 5200 series separates. And I did extensive measurements on those pieces, and I found problems with distortion on the main channel XLR outputs, to the point where I went to Yamaha Japan and showed them my measurements and had them confirm what I found. And it doesn't look good on paper. Like, it should be measuring much better than it did. This should be state of the art kind of performance that we weren't getting. but I made it very clear that even though I didn't measure the greatest performance, I couldn't hear a problem because the distortion was still at 0.05%, and the detectability for most humans is probably around 1%. So you're about 20 times lower than detectability. And especially at my age, I'm in my, I'm 46 years old now. So my hearing is not quite as good as it was when I was 20. So, you got to keep things into perspective. Just because you can measure something and it doesn't measure the greatest doesn't necessarily translate to it sounding bad. That's why I think it's
Sure.
important to have objective measurements and then subjective listening tests as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And our reviews, of course, always include both, and they're pretty clear about that. And I often say that too. I'll say, hey, I measured something. It doesn't look like it would be audible, and I couldn't hear it. And, you expect of everybody that writes for your magazine integrity. And I'll just mention, I'll call out one of my friends who likes to tease me constantly on YouTube. So I'm going to do it back to him, James Larson. So he's the main speaker reviewer, main subwoofer reviewer for Audioholics. And I'll tell you guys, I know lots of people who do reviews. And if they don't keep the product because they're allowed to, they keep the product just because they never send it back. It's really common, and it's not appropriate, but it happens a lot. And there's a lot of guys out there that do that. They'll keep products for really long periods of time. There's times where I've called up manufacturers and said, hey, when am I getting, XYZ? And they're like, oh, it's coming. Unfortunately, it's still stuck with the last reviewer. And then the next thing I know, like, yeah, I don't think he's giving it back. We're going to have to send you a new pair. Sorry. And you find
Yeah.
out some reviewer sat on it for a year or 2 years. James, it feels like that will destroy everybody's belief in his integrity. And so he will not do that. I mean, he will hound these companies until they take it back. Even if the product is cheap and they're saying, look, you can throw it in the garbage. It costs us more money to take it back than it does for you just to keep it or give it away. We don't want it back. And he says, I don't care. I don't want that. He has so much integrity. And I give him a lot of credit for that.
I've seen that firsthand when he had a pair of $60 speakers. I think Polk or someone gave him, and he didn't want to keep them afterwards. And I had to go and give them away in a contest, which is more work for us because then we got to go mail it out. So I've seen that.
But I give him credit, and I think it's testament to the kind of people that you surround yourself with in this magazine, which are good guys who want to make sure everybody knows that these products are being reviewed fairly and honestly without influence from the manufacturers in any way, including getting the product. So we have that. And then the other thing is that I think everybody knows that we have started multiple movements, including the Truth and Power movement, to hold manufacturers accountable, even manufacturers that advertise with us.
Yes. Yeah. For example, the Sound United thing, when I did that whole article on Truth and Power and I called them out for not having honest power ratings on their receivers, Sound United is one of our biggest advertisers. I took a huge risk that publishing that article and exposing that I could have lost them, and that would literally change the way we do business if we lose a big advertiser like that. Like I wouldn't be able to do as much content. But they were so supportive to the point where I was talking to the owner of the company, and he said he wanted to change that. And they stopped rating their one channel driven nonsense or showing that as the first metric on their websites. They've actually changed their website to show at least two channels driven, and so did Onkyo and Integra. They changed their website so it's not promoting the one channel driven at 6 ohms at 10% at 1 kilohertz. So I was really pleased to see that everybody was very receptive to that.
Right. Yeah. And I think I think manufacturers are receptive to this in other ways too. We've had manufacturers come to us basically saying that they want rating systems that consumers can understand. THD is a little bit esoteric for some people. A lot of specs that you get out of measurements can be a little esoteric. And so they want to distill this stuff down into something that the average manufacturer can walk into a store like a Best Buy or a Walmart, look at a product, see some sort of a rating, and know that it's a good product or not. And they often look to work with us because they know that we will put science behind that there's integrity behind the rating system. And these are manufacturers that are looking for this. And I think that that's actually impressive.
Yeah, and to the defense of the manufacturers like Sound United, the first thing they said to me is, we have to rate power this way because if you go to the Best Buys or you go to the department stores, which really Best Buy is the last one left, right?
Right.
You go to these department stores and they have these bogus ratings on sound bars. So a consumer walks in, he looks at $1,000 Denon receiver that's rated at 110 watts a channel, and then he looks at a sound bar for $600 that says 1,400 watts total, and he's gonna be like, "Why am I getting the Denon receiver that's more money, doesn't have as many channels, doesn't have the speakers included, yet it's rated at less power than this 1400-watt sound bar. And that's a real problem, is people that are uninformed or uninitiated in the business or in the industry, and they look at these stickers or they look at these bullet points and they get misled.
Yeah, it's too bad. And I'll just we this goes back to the truth and power. If you guys go to a Best Buy or a Walmart that has LG products, look specifically at their sound bars, or they have some speakers like portable outdoor speakers. Check out their power ratings. Some of those are so off the wall. I can't even believe that. Even I can't believe a marketing person was able to sit down and write that with a straight face. I mean, they've got one speaker. I think it's rated for like 5,600 watts.
Oh my
It's
God.
like something like this big. It's no way it produces that.
So
So
you got some interesting bullet points on this slide. What is
yeah,
professional reviewing?
so I think sometimes people like wonder what is the difference between a reviewer that might write for a Stereophile, an Audioholics, a Sound Envision, or versus somebody who's doing typical user reviews. And I think that one of the keys is that the people who get hired to do these reviews often, I mentioned this in a previous slide, they have connections to the industry, they have experience in education that's related in some way, not always, but often. In our case, and in the case of Stereophile and Soundstage, they provide measurements of products as well and technical explanations typically to go along with that. And so one of the other things, though, is professional reviewers are usually reviewing a lot of products. And what that means is that we know what the field looks like. So if I'm reviewing a $100 bookshelf speaker, I also know what every other, let's say, $50 to $150 bookshelf sounds like because I've had some hands-on experience with them, whether it's at shows or actually in my own home, or maybe another reviewer like James, who happens to live near me, has had those. So it gives us a good point of reference. On top of that, we have better products. So we have our own reference systems. We get to review higher end equipment. So if we're reviewing a $100 bookshelf and it seems to sound pretty good, we also know how that compares to a $500 bookshelf, a $1,000 bookshelf, and maybe a $5,000 bookshelf. And so we have a point of reference, and the readers know that because they can go back and look at the reviews. The reviews often say what the reference systems is. We make comparisons in there, but on top of that, all the other products we reviewed before provides people with a point of reference. When you look at user reviews, one of the potential problems is we don't know what their point of reference is. And so we have no idea if they think that this inexpensive speaker is really great sounding. Is that because that's actually the best speaker they've ever bought? In which case, probably it is really great sounding to them. But that doesn't mean it's great sounding. It just means it's better than what they were using before. So I think one of the key differences with professional reviewers is that they have this broader point of reference that often is better defined. You often see bad reviews that come from a misunderstanding. I mean, I'm into other things besides audio, and like everybody else, I often use user reviews to try to figure out if a product is good. And every once in a while, I'll see a review of a product that I actually am familiar with, and I'll see somebody bashing it, giving like a 1 star, it doesn't work. And then I'll look at what they say and realize that this is just somebody who didn't understand what they bought. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with the product. They just, misused it. I've even seen situations with audio equipment where people will talk about how it won't do something that product can't do. There was one person who was complaining that it was like a tiny little subwoofer was incapable of hitting cinema reference levels. And I'm like, it's an 8-inch subwoofer that costs like $200. What do you expect? Of
Hmm.
course it can't. It's not a bad product. It's fine for what it is.
The other thing I notice about consumers, consumer reviews tend to, the people that write them, they tend to justify their purchases by writing an overly positive review. They want to defend that they made the right purchase and decision. Not all the time, but I've seen that sometimes. Like if we have an overly negative review of a product, years ago I did a review of a Sunfire processor or something like that, and it had bugs, it had all these issues, and I got bashed like back and forth about it because people thought it was unfair that the product was great when it really wasn't a great product.
Yeah. Yeah. It
It's
comes
just
up.
it comes down to a whole reference.
That's right. Yep.
So this is
So
interesting here. You have this. You found reviews for a Polk speaker that we actually reviewed, an inexpensive Polk speaker. Why don't you go over this?
yeah, so James is going to probably watch this video, and he reviewed this, and he's probably going to give me a hard time for giving the speaker a hard time. This is like $100 a pair speaker, I believe. It's not a very expensive speaker from Polk. It's the T15. We reviewed it as part of a bunch of inexpensive speakers, and this particular one had a response problem, which you can see in that bottom graph in particular. You can see it in both of them, but it really shows up in that bottom graph where there was a notch in the response if you were right at the correct axis relative to the tweeter. But what James found was that if you listened 20 degrees above or below the proper axis, it actually was okay. Okay being that green line you see in the measurement in the first one up top. So what you can see is it still doesn't have a flat response.
Hmm.
There's actually a bit of a coloration there. But the problem was both of those were colorations. The dip was coloring it and you could hear it. And the peak that you see was
Two
also
kilohertz.
coloring it and you could hear
Yeah.
it. So it's, yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't. It wasn't, it had some problems. So what we ultimately did was James gave it 3.5 stars because for $100, what do you expect? And on the other hand, it's not a perfect product. It has issues. And for the money, there's actually other speakers out there we found that had a better measured response, but nothing's perfect. Everything has issues. So just as an example, one of the speakers that measures a bit better and sounds a bit better than this one was that MTM version of the Dayton Audio, the MK442 that we had looked at.
Right.
So that's a better speaker. It's about the same price, I believe. But the MK442, I believe, is less efficient and doesn't have quite as deep bass, if I recall.
And just so
And so,
people know the reference, 3.5 stars, that's on a scale of 5 stars. So it's not
yes,
a
thank
scale of
you.
10. It's 3.5 out of 5.
But going back to this poke, then I went to Amazon and I looked and I was surprised to find that 78% of people were giving it 5 stars. And then I didn't put this here, but there was actually quite a bit of 4-star ratings. I mean, this was a very positively reviewed speaker. And then you read the reviews and it's like, again, you look at these measurements, clearly the response is not great on this speaker. The high frequencies do not extend up to 20 kilohertz. Basically, it starts rolling off at 10 kilohertz, which is probably not super audible to most people, which is fine. I'm just making the point. The speaker does not have full extension. It's colored. It's not a neutral speaker. There's, it's a cheap speaker and it has obvious issues. And yet you
Right.
would see these reviews and people are like, it's a perfect speaker. It sounds great. It's very neutral. It has deep bass and great high frequencies that extend all the way to 20 kilohertz. And I'm like, I don't know what they're listening to. They didn't hear the T15 I did. So, it's unfortunate because I think it misleads people. And the sad thing is, I don't think Sound United is playing this game. From what I
No.
know of the company, I doubt that they're out there paying for fake reviews. But I wouldn't be shocked if some of these reviews are fake.
Well, I will tell you this. I noticed on some of the manufacturers' websites where they sell product directly, they filter their reviews. You never find anything under their 5 star review on any of their products. There's online speaker companies that do this. There's companies that sell accessories, and then they have a little section for user reviews, and they're always a perfect review. You can't tell me there hasn't been a disgruntled consumer that got a product that didn't live up to its expectations or was defective, and they went back to that website and put a review up and talked about it. But if you go
Yeah.
and you look at these reviews, and it could be hundreds or thousands of reviews, they're always 4.5 lowest to 5 star reviews on the manufacturer's websites.
Yeah. And I've seen some people have posted about this. So I just want to reiterate a point because I think this is unfortunate when manufacturers do this. It is illegal for a manufacturer to take down a negative review unless they know and can prove that the review is fake itself. So if somebody is like out there to harm that company and is creating fake reviews, they have a right to take it down. But if you honestly bought a product, did not like it, you have a right to put up a review and they cannot take it down. And so I'll just say this, if you're falling into that, here's what I recommend you do. Take a screenshot of your review once you post it. Post it up there. If it gets taken down, you can report them to the FTC because it is illegal for them to do that. And I think all of us would agree. We want manufacturers to put everything up there, put everything good and bad. So I know if a product sounds great, but it tends to fail after a year, I want to know that.
What would be useful for manufacturers, and I know it's a little bit of work on the manufacturer side as well as the consumer, but anytime someone wants to post a user review on their website, they should have a little field that has the serial number of the product that they purchased. That would
Yeah.
immediately eliminate whether or not it's a fake review, because then that person actually has the product. And they could look in their database when the thing was manufactured. Maybe there was a rev change in the product since then. They changed the crossover or something to improve the product. Then they could get back to the consumer and say, hey, we've had a crossover improvement on your product. If you don't mind, we will send you a new crossover and you can go back and reevaluate the speaker. I think that would speak volumes about the customers or the website and the business's customer service.
Yeah, well, and there's companies that are out there that are somewhat like that. I mean, they don't go so far as to have you put serial numbers in, but I know like Monoprice and Parts Express, if I've ever had a bad experience and I tell them, they like bend over backwards to make it right. And it's not because I'm a reviewer. You know, like most of my experience with that, they don't know who I am.
Yeah.
So in many cases, it's like, hey, I bought this and it's not as good as I thought it was going to be, and I'm having issues with it. And they're like, oh, well, can we get you something else? Do we have something else that would better meet your needs? What can we do for you? And it's great. So there's companies out there that have good customer service. They take care of you. And then of course there's others where it's like, I'm having problems with your product, and they're like, well, you better not post it online or I'll sue you.
Yep. Yep. I've seen that too. So what is this slide about? You have a review here that's a very
I
high
just pulled
rated.
somebody's review. Yeah, he gave it 5 stars. It's detailed. I loved it because it's like there's poet in the name. It's a very poetic, you know, like the language is flowery about the Poke speaker, the T15. It refers to it as close to perfect, and I thought, close to perfect. This is not a close to perfect speaker. What did you review? I'm not even sure it's close to perfect for $100.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, I just grabbed it to show people the kind of stuff you see. And I'm not saying this is fake. This guy, this very well could be I'm sure it's a real person. He probably really hasn't really liked the speaker, and that's
Well, they have a
fine.
verified purchase label next to it, so Amazon must have verified them.
Yes, but remember that you can have fake reviews that are verified, because the way these companies that are doing it work is they actually pay you to buy the product. So real
Yes.
people are really buying products and really writing reviews. The issue is they are being paid specifically to write 4 or 5 star reviews about the product, and they may not have any interest in the product. They may have just gone and bought it because they're doing this program.
Gotcha.
So, you know, I think through all of this, probably a lot of people are going to say, well, who do we believe then? And as I said, I think that you just have to be honest about your affiliation. If you're a user and you're providing reviews, what I want to know is that you're an honest user providing reviews. And if you're fake, the FTC, the government has to regulate this and get it out of there. Companies like Amazon, which I know they're trying, they need to go through and get rid of it. But the problem is, how do you get rid of things like people legitimately buying products and posting reviews where the fake part of it really can't be traced in the review process itself? And so I think the other part of it is, if you're being paid money or given product for free in some way to post a review, you are required by law to say that, but please say it. I want to know that too when I read it.
Yeah.
And we audioholics always do that. If we're getting product out of it for some reason, we would say that, and it wouldn't be a review anymore. You know, it would be sponsored content at that point.
Yep.
I don't think any reviews should be paid for in any way. So, you know, I think that the reality is reviews should always be kept separate from the monetization of a magazine, a website, you know, whatever, Amazon, somebody's personal business. You know, we've sought to ensure honesty in everything we do, and I think everybody else needs to follow suit with that. There is no escaping influence, as I mentioned, so I think people always have to keep that in mind. And I think the best way to address the influence issue, I guess, is the honesty. Just, you know, wear it on your sleeve. So you and I have connections to lots of people in the industry, close relationships. I've been taken out for steak dinners before. I'm assuming you probably have too, right?
Yep. Absolutely. At the trade shows, especially.
Right. It happens. The key is, I don't go and give them a positive review after that. In fact, I'd probably be reluctant to take a product from them immediately after that.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, you have to find a balancing act with some of these companies too, because you don't want to needlessly bash a product for two reasons. Number one is that product might not warrant such a bashing. Maybe you're picking too many nits that aren't real. But at the
Right.
same token, you don't want to offend the manufacturer, and you don't want to offend the end user. I found years ago I was a little bit more blunt in my language when I did reviews. And I used to piss off a lot of people. If I said something about a product that didn't jive, I would get bashed all over AVS forum. So the art of reviewing is to say negative things about the product, but in a way that doesn't overly offend people. Because I notice people in the audio industry are a bit sensitive, especially even on our YouTube channel. The choice words I use sometimes gets me in trouble. So there is a balance and act. I mean, you do have to speak from the heart and speak the truth of what you found, but you also have to keep things into perspective.
Right. No, you're very right. And the other thing I'll say, I've said this before, and I think people take offense to it sometimes, but there's a lot of truth to it. a lot of products today are not that bad. You know, the electronics, the entire industry has matured dramatically, and it's become pretty simple to design basically cheap products that perform well and measure well, or well enough for the money. I mean, there's a lot of DA converters, for instance, that are darn near perfect for like under $100,
Right.
and pretty much perfect for $300, let's say. There are speakers out there for $300 to $500 that are better than what you could get for $1,000 not that long ago. So there are products out there today in general. A lot of electronic products are really pretty good. Not all, but a lot of them. And what that means is that, and the other thing is, I think you're the same way. I don't bother taking reviews of products that I'm confident are not going to be good. I think you sent me something recently. It was something probably sold on Amazon. It was a pair of like studio style speakers, clearly a Chinese made generic product. It didn't look like any effort had been put into it to make it a good sounding product. And you said, did you want to review this? And I said, not really. I don't have a lot of confidence it's going to be any good. It seems like a waste of my time. So sometimes people kind of wonder, like, why are all your reviews positive? Well, part of it is we kind of screen the products in the first place. We just aren't bothering to review stuff that we think is going to be bad, because a lot of effort goes into this. The other
Yep.
issue is, as I said, a lot of products are pretty good. So, you know, like those Pokes that I'm picking on, they're fine for $100. There's nothing wrong with those
Yeah, stop
speakers.
bashing that speaker, man. Let it go.
No, I'm saying it is fine for $100. It's just not a perfect product. You just wouldn't expect it to be perfect for $100. And I
Yeah.
think people need to know that. So when I go out to buy something, sometimes it's hard for me to know, especially if I don't know a lot about that product genre. Sorry, I've been losing my voice, guys. That's what's going on right now. So I don't know, like, is $100 get you into the diminishing returns point on speakers? If I don't know anything about speakers, I might think that's true. Now, I do know a lot about speakers, so I know that's not even close to true. That's pretty far off from the diminishing returns point. But there's other products that I buy that I don't know anything about. You know, I'm relatively tech savvy, but I don't know everything there is to know about laptops. So I have no idea, for instance, how much money you have to spend before you hit the diminishing returns.
Yep.
There's
So
Go ahead.
I'm trying to look through some of these comments, but there's a lot of them. This is a pretty hot topic. We got over 200 people in here right now. So this is an interesting one, and I touched on this topic before. Why would a manufacturer have reviews on their own website? It's just as dumb idea for multiple reasons. Leave it to third-party sites. You know, it's logical to think that way, but I could tell you from an impulse buyer, for someone that's online, especially like on a Black Friday, and they have to go and get that gift, they go on that website, even if they know the reviews are put on the website that they're buying from, it gives them enough confidence to hit that click button in the shopping cart. If they're on the fence about it and all of a sudden they see 50 reviews that are all 5 stars of a new center channel speaker on a website, let's just say any brand, you know, just a generic brand, they're going to see all these positive reviews and be like, you know what, these all can't be fake. These have to be real users that have purchased the products. They have to be verified. And some of them are real reviews. But I do think that these manufacturers are cherry picking and they're taking out the bad reviews, because there's no way that everything can be all roses.
You're probably right. Excuse me. As I said, they shouldn't be doing that. There's legal issues with cherry picking reviews like that. But yeah, I think manufacturers, if they want to post reviews on their products, fine. But the posting of nothing but positive reviews is not the most honest. And yes, it's probably better to let third-party review sites handle that. We know, though, everybody, even good companies, are going to be posting positive comments people make about their product in quotes. You know,
Well, I could tell
that's
you,
pretty normal.
even in a bigger industry than audio, I could tell you that this has been happening on Rotten Tomatoes with movies,
Mm-hmm.
especially Disney movies. You'll see a movie get bashed when it comes out, like for like a Star Wars movie or whatever. It'll get really bad ratings, and all of a sudden those ratings will kind of disappear, and it kind of reboots, and they redo them. Or on YouTube, when they posted on the CW, they posted the trailer for Batwoman. Oh my God, that was a cringe fest. That was probably the worst trailer I've ever seen on any show. It had 8 times the thumbs down than it did the thumbs up, and all
Wow.
the comments were negative. And then like 3 weeks later, I went back to that video and it was like reset. And you know,
Well,
there's some shady stuff going on there.
there could be, yeah. So somebody earlier had asked about golden samples or golden review products.
Yeah, I
So
saw that. Yep.
yeah, and I believe what they're referring to is the notion that manufacturers send a ringer, basically a product that was designed specifically to be better than what's actually sold in stores. So That we know that's happened in the past. It used to happen with car reviews, I believe, a lot, where they would throw a car in that actually had stuff done to it to make it better than the one you would buy. Better tires, better brake pads. The engine might have been tuned up a little bit, something like that. With audio equipment, it's not that it can't happen. It's that it's actually pretty expensive for a manufacturer to tune up a product before they send it to you because of how they're manufactured. So the other thing is we typically get products that come in sealed boxes that you can tell were right from wherever it came from, which is usually not local. So if you get a Marantz receiver, for instance, that receiver is typically made in either Japan or China, and that's where it's packaged. So when it comes fully sealed and you can tell it's never been touched, that kind of helps us to know. We look at the products, look them over to make sure nothing looks fishy. But for a company like Sound United, for instance, to take one of their even top of the line receivers and make a better version of that would cost them a fortune to do like a one off
Well,
like
I
that.
will tell you this: I have gotten product samples in the past of Avery receivers, and it said show stock on the back.
Yeah.
And years later, one of the guys that worked for the company basically told me they would, for Audioholics, they would cherry pick the product that we'd get. They would know the tolerances. So if they did their bench tests and it was on the low end of the tolerance spectrum for meeting their requirements as opposed to the high end for the better, they would
Mm-hmm.
find me a sample that met the
Measure the
better
best. Yeah.
because they know I measure the stuff.
And they want it to look good. Sure. Well, and that's I guess a golden sample idea right there. And but it said it on it, so you could tell. What I'm saying is, if it doesn't say anything on it, usually we kind of feel assured that it's. But I guess the bigger point really is we don't know. We can't tell. You know,
Yeah.
if it looks like the product you buy, then you assume it is. There are companies that try to avoid that. There's Consumer Reports, there's RT or rating, rting.com. They buy all their products, but they end up needing, because they don't take advertising. They don't have any relationship to manufacturers. They get the products directly at stores. What it means is that they need to have massive amounts of money basically from other sources to cover that. It's very unrealistic for the majority of the industry, and I cannot imagine a way of doing that. Consumer Reports has basically a very large investment basically that allows them to do that, and they actually sell I'm trying to remember the word for this, but it's like a retirement product to people to help pay for those reviews.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing that in audio. Like it would be a
No.
whole other business for us. So the point is, it's really hard. That's why I was saying it's like practically impossible to avoid influence.
It is, and I want to defend anybody that's out there that's in the audio business that's involved in doing reviews or involved in creating an influencer page. It's not easy to monetize this stuff. It's not easy to make a living in audio. It's very hard, actually. The
Yeah.
manufacturers tend to have very small budgets for advertising. It's not like people are coming at you with 30 or 40 grand a month in advertising. And it's hard to monetize automatically using, um, Google ads and stuff. Anytime you get ahead, it seems Google tries to find a way to slap you down.
Yeah.
And with all the algorithm changes that they've done in the last couple of years, they've really been deconstructing organic traffic for legitimate sites. It's been a constant struggle for us. Anybody that tells you it hasn't been a struggle to maintain good traffic on a website, even with good content, they're lying to you because this is
Yeah.
this is a real challenge, a real challenge.
Or they didn't have a lot of traffic to begin with.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is a good topic that we covered here. I hope you guys, when you go to websites and even when you go to our site, you take a look at the detail level that you're getting when someone says review in the page title of their product that they're covering, because not everything is a real review. Not everything is exhaustive or objectively done. Look to see that the article actually has an author name tied to it, that they use real product photos and not just show stock photos or press release photos. And it's getting harder and harder to find websites that actually do objective measurements. There's only a handful of websites, us included, that are doing that. So it speaks volumes when you find good content to kind of really take stock in that content and appreciate what went into creating that content, the efforts were behind the
Mm-hmm.
scenes for everybody.
Yeah, we spend months putting most of the stuff together. Any one article, usually at least I'd say a month's worth of time has gone into putting that together, unless it's a really basic article.
Yeah. So, I kind of curious what you guys think about this topic. Give me some comments down below. have you lost faith in reviews online, or do you have specific areas where you go that you trust? How do you feel about Amazon? I wish we didn't have to work with Amazon and we didn't have to integrate Amazon into our site, but unfortunately, that's the way the industry is now. Every
Mhm.
website out there has an Amazon influencer page. We have one now as well, and I do try to use it as a positive venue for people that do want to have informed purchasing decisions. Like, for example, you just did that video for us on that inexpensive two-channel system using active
Yeah.
speakers and a DAC. The day after you posted that system, the DAC was unavailable on Amazon. So now we have to go and
Yeah.
find alternatives to publish the article. It's very
I,
frustrating.
I'd love to believe that I was so influential that people bought it out, but I'm guessing it went on sale for Black Friday. It went from, I think it was $250 to $200, and it's like a fully balanced DAC using the top of the line ESS Saber DAC chip. And it's a well designed DAC too. It's been measured by a bunch of folks. I've actually used one before myself, which is why I recommended it. For $200, that's a steal. And
Yeah.
then yeah, the speakers I think went down for a little while too, but they've been put back in stock, and so people can still buy those. That's the same thing. I'll just mention this. Like, we didn't review those speakers, but I was invited to when that speaker was launched. It was sort of a big deal, and they had partnered with, I'm going to forget who, but I think it was like Musician's Friend or Sam Ash, and I got invited to like an event to go check them out, and they had them set up in a makeshift studio, and I ended up having some one-on-one time with them, which is why I knew that they were a pretty good speaker, even though I hadn't reviewed them directly, because I had listened to them by myself in a properly treated room, and I knew them to be a good value. In fact, I've been bugging you to get a set to review because I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, one of these days. So,
Yeah.
guys, I hope you like this video. Please thumb it up. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't done that already. I've been hearing lately that people have been getting unsubscribed from channels. So please check and make sure you're still subscribed to Audioholics.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube is getting really flaky about stuff. Hit the bell
They
notification so you know when we have new videos going online. I've got a pretty cool video coming on our premiere in about a day or two, so you can get a notification of that. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. You get unique content there. You get to see stuff before you get to see it here or on audioholics.com. And like I said, we're going to start putting these PowerPoint slide presentations there as a password protected kind of URL if you want to go back and reference stuff. So Matt, thanks for bearing through your voice problems. We were on here for over an hour. You did really well. I appreciate you joining us in this discussion.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry about that. Hopefully my voice comes back to normal in a week or so.
Awesome. Well, my friends, that's a wrap for tonight. And until next time, keep listening.